The protesters may have been moved out from Wellington Street in front of Parliament over the weekend, but officials in Ottawa are still keeping an eye on support camps that remain in place. They are active outside the nation's capital, at least 3, in fact, on private land. And it's not clear whether the protesters who are there are resting up before going home or gearing up for future action. Judy Trin is with us this morning. She gave us such excellent reporting last week, took us into the encampment on Coventry Road, and is back with us this morning. Judy, still plenty of questions about what happened, what the future looks like. Those encampments that are still up and in place, tell us more about them and what you're seeing.
Well, Heather, it's interesting because the first thing that protesters told me when they started tearing down the main encampment on Coventry Road was that this was not a retreat, but a regrouping. And where they retreated to were 4 camps. We now know of 4 camps within a half-hour to a 1 hour's drive of Ottawa. They, as you mentioned, are on private land, usually farmers' land. They have permission to be there. Those camps that we know of are in Greeley to the south, Embrun and Van Cleek Hill to the east of Ottawa, and a large encampment in Arnprior, about an hour west of the city. Now, the question that needs to be asked is, will police move in? Right now, there is a lot of setup. There's live streams in which protesters are talking about how they're planning and what strategies they're going to use, but nothing has materialized yet. As we know, Heather, the Emergency Act is in effect for 30 days. That would give police the right to move in on this property if they feel that there is a risk to national security. But once again, they have to take into account charter rights because these protesters are given permission by these private property owners to set up at those camps. Heather.
So that continues, but I'm wondering, some of the key leaders of the protest are still in custody. One denied bail yesterday, Judy, one waiting to hear what will happen in his particular circumstance. Tell us more about that and the effect that that is having on the protesters.
It's interesting because you could look at this as almost like a leaderless or a leaderless movement right now. It could be very organic, but at the same time, is it as risky or dangerous without its leaders? There appears to be no clear direction. What is interesting is you mentioned the 2 leaders, Tamara Litch, who was actually instrumental in setting up the Coventry camp, as well as Pat King. Now, Pat King was sort of the man on the street. He had direct contact with the truckers. He actually would be e-transferring them money, so they actually went to him whenever they had needs. Now, it's interesting. Now, he also, in terms of what kind of chaos they could wreak while out in the suburbs, with Pat King, one of the things that he actually promoted was a slow roll of the airport. What that meant was that he had a convoy of roughly 24 vehicles, basically slow driving through the airport. They were moving, so they weren't obstructing any streets, but they were causing a massive traffic jam. Could that happen? That could be one of the tactics that they use, Heather.
Judy, obviously, the political, the social fallout, it's going to be felt for some time, even though Wellington Street, the blockade is turned down. What, as you've covered this and reflected on it, what do you think are the issues that we need to address, the lessons that we need to learn?
Heather, I think one thing that we perhaps have not been as direct about is the idea of race and racism and how it factors into this demonstration, this protest. We need to look at the fact that this was primarily a convoy organized and participated in by white Canadians. This has racial implications in the sense that there was a Black police chief at the forefront of this operation from the beginning. Now, he resigned. The police board chair was forced to step down. So locally, it has a huge impact. But also, let's talk about the policing costs. Before this massive force that you've seen on the past weekend, policing was costing $800,000 a day to maintain this occupation. That's already $20 million. So we've already spent at least $20 million. There's got to be an accounting of that. We have to figure out where the strategy and the tactics went wrong. Police made mistakes and they're going to have to be held accountable. First of all, why were huge transport trucks allowed into the city core? There were indications online for several months that they were planning to entrench themselves in the city. So why was that allowed? Those trucks ended up becoming weapons. Police could not search hundreds of trucks, so they were worried. And also the presence of military and police expertise within this group. As I've reported, we know that there were at least, we now know at least 10 active investigations into soldiers who have been sympathetic to this protest or have participated in the protest, along with two JTF2 members. Those are members of Canada's elite counterterrorism unit. We also know that dozens of former police officers are also supportive of this cause. There have been indications that there may have been leaks within the police organization, and that prevented slowly perhaps and from getting his operation underway because there were leaks as to what they were going to do next. There's also a massive distrust of police, not just from the protesters after what they faced, but from regular citizens of Ottawa. And the reason for that is that citizens were basically held hostage for 3 weeks. They were promised that there would be police action, but instead they saw officers look the other way when fuel was being delivered. They saw officers, OPP officers, inviting protesters into their squad car to take selfies. So all those things have to be looked at, and we have to take a close look at why we allowed this to happen. Heather.
Judy, thank you for that and for all of the reporting. I would say your Twitter thread is very interesting. The makeup of the encampments, as you talked about, the lack of ethnic diversity, the degree of entrenchment of emotion, the response of locals. It's some very interesting reading, and it's always great to talk to you, Judy. Thank you as well for that.
Thank you.
Judy Trinh is in Ottawa.